All right, well, I am Benjamin J. Heckendorn, also known as Ben Heck. People call me Ben Heck because when I first made a website, I bought a .com. I splurged $8 for a .com. I'm like, I want it to be as short as possible. That's why you see sites like Uber, Fiverr, Printer, because you want the shortest name possible that hasn't been taken. So back in 2004, benheck.com was available. I'm like, 7-letter .com, score! But little did I know my name would inadvertently change because of it. But, whatever. So what I want to talk about today is kind of like my history of modding video game consoles and kind of take you through, the story and maybe try to have some, never before heard tales about it. And then at the end, we'll have questions if you want to ask me anything about the video game stuff. I want to concentrate mostly on the video game consoles and modding. We're having a separate panel tomorrow regarding pinball, so if you're interested in pinball-related things, that would be the panel to check out. So if you don't care about video games at all, only pinball, this panel will probably bore you. Modding video game systems. I grew up in kind of the Atari era, because I was born in '75, millions of years ago. So we had, there was Ataris when we were kids. But I really got into gaming really more with the Nintendo because we actually didn't have an Atari when we were kids because we were too poor. And they were slightly less poor in 1988, and we got a Nintendo when it came out. So that's kind of where I got interested in it. But then later on, around the year 2000, I was working at my first real job. I was like, ooh, I have all this money or whatever. Well, not really, but I wanted to kind of do a fun project. I was into electronics when I was 10, but then I foolishly got into independent filmmaking when I was a teenager, which is not a complete waste of time because I guess I have the show now. But I was I want to get back into electronics. So, winter of 2000, I went and I bought this crappy little TV that you see on the screen. I think I got it from Best Buy, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I really going to try to make, I don't know why, I was like, I want to make a portable Atari 2600. I just thought it'd be kind of cool. And at that point in time, Atari was the hot collectible, right? It isn't anymore. Now it's Nintendo, Super Nintendo. Which is interesting. I've kind of noticed the nostalgia wave. It's this theory I've come up with. The nostalgia wave is in 20-year chunks, right? So what happens is whatever was popular 20 years ago is the new hot nostalgia. So late 90s, early 2000s, it was Atari. And I think what happens is you have the people who played it when they were 10, and then they grow up, they go to college, and they start to have money when they're 30, and they're like, I want to remember what it was like to be 10. So they think back 20 years in time, and at that time it was Atari. Now the Atari people are older. Now they have mortgages and motorcycles and divorces. So now the Atari stuff has gone down, but now it's the next generation, 30-year-olds, who were big into N64 and stuff. And it's kind of interesting to see that wave. So I guess, at the time, the Atari was a cool thing. So I'm like, I'm going to build a portable Atari because I'd recently learned at that time that Atari collecting was a thing, which just flabbergasted me. So I was like, I like Atari, I like electronics, I like design. I just gotten into doing CNC work, machining at my job. So I was like, I bet I could make some sort of cool retro portable Atari. So this is a digital photo of a Polaroid. This is how long I've been doing this. There was a Polaroid. And that was the very first prototype of a portable Atari. See, it was a clear acrylic case. I actually don't know where that prototype went. I mean, it's probably the same guts, so probably the case is it's probably in the garbage someplace. So I thought it'd be really cool. So I spent about 2 or 3 months working on making this portable Atari, and I chopped it up, and I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I'm better at electronics now, but back then I was terrible. The insides of that thing is just a mess. And there wasn't as much information online. The make community or makers wasn't even really a thing yet. It is now, which is great. So I had to research my own way to make a composite video circuit. I mean, if I would have dug hard enough, I could probably have found something from Usenet in 94, but at that time I had to roll my own. And since people have created much better video circuits than I did. Oh my gosh. This is what digital cameras looked like in 2000. It was awful. Actually, no, this is beyond awful because I recently found a Sony Mavica at Goodwill and I took it to Maker Faire and was taking retro photos the whole time, and actually it looks better than this. So I don't know what I recorded this with. It looks like a Game Boy Color camera that was colorized. But okay, so this looks like some sort of blurry moon photo, but you can kind of see the guts of the very first Atari portable that I made. There's a horribly drawn PCB in the middle. See that? Like I hand drew the traces with a magic marker. Oh, look, there's a year, 2000. See, right below the Atari symbol. And the upper left, you can see the television, the little pocket TV that I bought. It's so ridiculous thinking back now. I remember driving back from Best Buy, and I was like, wow, I spent $150 on this pocket television. I hope I wasn't a waste. And then, no, clearly it wasn't. Decades later and many projects later, and, fun, exciting adventures, like coming to Oregon and hanging out with you fine people. Here's another photo. Oh yeah, Xenophobe. That's weird. So they ported Xenophobe to the Atari 2600 for some reason. And that was a cartridge I saw. I think it was like New Year's Eve, 1999. And we were hanging around Madison, Wisconsin, which is like a huge, drinking town. Especially, so that's where we were for New Year's, was State Street. And there's a little shop, and they were selling this game, and it was like $35 or $40. It's gone down since then. But I was like, first of all, they made Xenophobe the Atari, and wow, that's a lot of money. And the guy's like, oh yeah, this retro stuff is hot right now. And that was one of the things that kind of triggered my mind, like, oh, so people care about this old stuff? Because I didn't know, I wasn't in those circles. I didn't hang out at these shows back then. So yeah, I built a portable out of that, and then I spent a couple of years just kind of refining it. And the thing that was really cool is I think it was like a GeoCities site that I made. Because there's a good photo of the first one. And I actually still have this. Everything else I build, I sell. Well, almost everything. But this I still have. So I'll probably never get rid of it. Well, maybe. No, I should probably keep it. I don't know. So I made this little GeoCities site. And then all of a sudden, I started getting all of these emails from people that were just amazed. They're like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. I want to buy it. And I had no idea there was this whole world out there of people that cared about these classic game systems. And I'm like, well, I should keep doing it. So... in the early 2000s, I was, constantly making new iterations. There's some cool ones. This one had you could link the systems together. Basically, it connected the joystick ports, and then one system fed video to the other, so you could kind of create like a two-player system. Of course, I was using these big, clunky DB9s, which is kind of laughable now. I look at my old stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I was so bad. I mean, I made it look good. And now it's kind of weird. Now my engineering is better, but I don't have the time to make things look good. It's really sad how that's inversed over the years for me. So I'm just going to show you some cool photos of the evolution of the Atari stuff. There's a nice wood grain one in the background there. I think the one in the foreground, I think we sold that or auctioned it off at the Classic Gaming Expo 2003 in Vegas. That was a fun show. I haven't been back there since. Oh yeah, here's an all wooden one. Like I went to the wood store, where I bought. It was some sort of. It was like a home builder store. Anyway, I bought oak stair steps, and then I CNC'd them out to create this enclosure. You can see there. See on the upper left, it says volume and bright. So I was still buying pocket televisions because this is before you could just buy. Nowadays you can go on Amazon and get like a 3-inch backup camera for like $15. It's ridiculous. Back then, nope. You were like having to take apart $200 pocket televisions, take the tuner off. Even back then, I think white LEDs had just come out. So I was taking out the tube, the yes, thank you, CFL. I forget all my abbreviations. I would take out the CFL, which is basically compact fluorescent bulb, which is basically like a miniature bulb. That's what laptops had until about 2008. And I replaced it with white LEDs to save power. So I was trying cool things. I was like using these Sony infilithium batteries, which apparently they still make these. Like we were filming a Halloween special for our show, Ghost Squad 2, which will come out on Halloween this year, by the way. And one of the external Sony monitors was still using these batteries, even though that battery is like 18 years old now. Pretty insane. Oh, look at that mess. Oh, that's inside the wooden one. So if you look inside of it, okay, Windows 10, I don't know how to zoom in it. Oh, yes, I mean, see, it's a routed piece of oak. You can see the, I put my initials in it. Oh, how cute. But like, look, here's the TV. You've got this big tuner right there. And oh, man, what a mess. It kind of sucks as you get older, you have better tools to do this kind of stuff with. Like, I have I don't even know how many 3D printers I have. I actually lost count. I have all that stuff, but then you have less time to refine it, unfortunately. And how do I advance to the next photo now? So I zoomed, and that caused it. Really? Zoom all the way out?
Yeah, it's really weird.
Oh, that is so dumb. Thanks, Windows. Oh, come on!
Here's a different photo of your.
I was trying the Microsoft HoloLens at Maker Faire, and they're like, stick out your hand and click like a mouse. I'm like, that is stupid. It's like, that is what you do with a mouse. I shouldn't be doing it with my hand. It was, sorry. But, I have a Surface, so I'm not all against Microsoft. So let's just go through a few of these, and then we can talk about some of the newer systems. Oh, yeah, look at this composite video mod. Isn't that awful? These are like resistors that I found in like a junk bin. This worked, but it was, I'm embarrassed to show. Actually, I'm not embarrassed. So I had my bedheck.com site. We actually started a forum, which was really popular for quite a time. And it was fun to show people how to mod their systems, and adding composite video. I mean, that was back when TVs. Well, I think they still do have RF modulators, but people wanted better video out of their systems, and I was one of the first people to kind of start showing people how they could mod that. And it's really cool to see how far people have come since then. Oh, silver metallic. That's a really technical term. Look at this. This is great. I think this is before I even started ordering parts online. This is like whatever I could pull out of an old radio. Yeah, now I'm just lazy. Now I just buy 10 of everything on Newark. But then as you can see, the instructions get a little better over time. So then I was like, I should mod other consoles, right? So I was like, what was it? The PlayStation 1, like the redefined small PlayStation 1. I went to, I think Walmart, and I bought one. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try something else. So strangely enough, like the first console I did after the Atari 2600, I jumped all the way as in, 18 years? Isn't that weird to think about? The distance between the Atari 2600 and the PlayStation 1 was only 18 years. And now more than 18 years has passed since the introduction of PlayStation 1. And we're all getting older, and soon we'll be dead. Oh, check this out. Look, Strider 2, I bought that new. So I actually have Strider 2 on PlayStation 1, which now is actually kind of a desirable game. But, look, there's that Sony Info-Lithium battery right there. I actually ran into that when I was working on the PlayStation Nintendo prototype. For whatever reason, Sony loves 7.4 volts, probably because they were an early adopter of lithium ion. And if you take two lithium ion cells and put them together, there's a total of 7.4. So you see that voltage in a lot of their systems, and they always have a yellow plug. So this same yellow plug on this, Sony PlayStation 1 was also in that Sony PlayStation prototype. Kind of weird. And then I made this, and look, I have a better camera now at this point. But it had an exposed disc in the back that was spinning. It's so ridiculous. And now, oh my gosh, it's got 700 megabytes on it. Now, you can store that in a grain of rice.
And use it as a buzzsaw if necessary.
Yeah. I think I actually might, I think I have a video of it here someplace. But so then I also started working on some other stuff like SNES key. And I kind of wanted this to look kind of like a mushroom block, where there's like an exclamation or a question mark. And this was, I bought a miniature, the Super Nintendo, the second revision one. Walmart was blowing them out for like $20. And now, go back in time and buy them, right? Okay, here's my big plan. So if you had a time machine, you take something that's worthless now but worth more in the past, and then you exchange it. So I would go, if I had a time machine, I would buy like 100 of those $20 DVD players, Then you go back to 1998 when DVD players were $600. And then you sell those off the back of the truck. They still have to be cheaper, like stolen goods. So you can sell them for $300. But it'd be a huge profit. And then you use that to buy Apple stock, which was almost out of business in 1998. And then also maybe a couple of Super Nintendos on the side. Yeah. If you think about it, most things are worth less in the past than they are now. So it's kind of tricky. How would you make money with a time machine? That's my plan. So anyway, I started making more iterations. Like here's a nice little one. I built a number of these like around 97, I think, and I actually spun some PCBs for the controls. I was still using the original Atari 2600 board because at the time I didn't know enough about how it worked to do it properly. Now I understand exactly how it works. It has a NTSC color burst crystal, which is 3.57 595 megahertz, and that is the same frequency as the color can change in an NTSC signal. And then they divide that by 3, and that is the master system clock. I'm sure some of you understand that, right?
Barely.
Okay, well, NTSC, it was meant to be black and white, and color was added as an afterthought, the American television standard. And it can only change color 160 times per line, which is why if you do chroma key with NTSC, it looks like crap, because if you have someone standing here like this, the color, it might go 4 pixels without changing, and that makes it look bad. This is probably, okay, that's too boring, sorry. I'm really obsessed with color space and 444 color subsampling and stuff like that. So in the mid-2000s, or a little bit after that, I started branching out into all sorts of stuff. I love 8-bit computers. I got my start with an Atari 800, which I still have. I recently refurbished it because I was inspired by all of the 8-bit guy's videos, because I love his channel. But I also really like the Apple II GS. I thought that was a really cool system. So it also has the same processor as the Super Nintendo, fun fact. So I started making some other cool stuff. And also, around this time, I kind of started going from, building projects for individuals to doing it more for companies, which I guess is, the process of being a sellout. But, oh no, don't look at the DigiKey box. Oh no, I'm getting in trouble. This is a controller. I actually built this for a movie called I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell. They actually commissioned me to make a controller for a character in the movie. So I started, basically started working for more larger companies at that time. And here's an example. I did a bunch of Xbox 360 laptops. So Xbox 360 laptop is something that I kind of did for fun with a friend of mine. He's like, "Can I commission you to do this?" I'm like, "Sure." And then it became the new big cool thing that I did. It was my next wave of popularity. And then what I also did was these were done for THQ, RIP, but this was a promotion for I believe it was Darksiders 2. So we actually did these liquid dipped custom graphic machines, and then I would build these, and I would basically deliver them to the company, and they were used as promotional items. So yeah, around 2007, 2008, I started doing more corporate work, which it's kind of cool because then you can charge more and you can do less. But okay, it's an American dream. But no, you can spend more time. The work kind of comes to you, and you can do cool things. But I still continue to make cool custom stuff. Like this one, Commodore 64. I wasn't a Commodore guy, obviously, as Atari guy. And although I do acknowledge the Commodore was a superior system, except for its clock speed, which was garbage compared to the Atari. But I started doing these cool things. I'm like, I'm going to make a cool Commodore. And that was one where I worked on it for a couple years, and it sucked. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw it out and start it over. And so I started it from scratch, and I'm like, it needs to look like a Commodore. So I used all of this nice plastic, and I painted it a nice puke beige, and it turned out pretty well. And then you can see in the front here, it has a SD card slot. So this used, even back then, 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, people were making disk drive substitutes using SD card slots. So that was kind of fun. And then I did one of the Atari 800. So I use an XE game system, and I see they have one for sale here at this show. I might buy it, make another one. But I was like, Atari 800 was how I got started in programming. It's what got me excited about electronics. I think that's a really good thing about gaming. Gaming was a great gateway drug for so many of us to pursue careers in electronics and things. And it's, if something can get you interested in a discipline or a technology, I think that's great. Instead of oh, look at this boring thing, look at the theory of electricity. But if ooh, this is how I make video games happen. Yes, now I'm interested. So I made this one really, really super sexy. And see the keyboard? Laptops have flat keyboards, but your keyboard on your desktop PC is at 10 degrees. So this one had a click up angled keyboard that would lay flat, but then you go click, click, and it would pop up to 10 degrees once the unit was deployed. So this is probably still my favorite portable I've ever built. And it's got a nice juicy cartridge slot in the front, and look at the buttons have the same shading. Oh, it's so beautiful. Look at this knob. And yes, that's why there's a recess in the screen here, so the knob can fit within it. See? Oh yeah, I was really thinking. So then I started working on the next gen stuff. I did a PlayStation 3, portable. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, okay, so here's another corporate thing. So I think it was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. So someone from Infinity Ward contacted me. He's like, hey, there's a big thing with video gaming. It's latency testing. And I'm like, tell me more. He's like, well, yeah, we're filming the playtester's thumbs and then seeing how fast the reaction time appears on the screen. Can you think of something better? And I'm like, yeah. And then we actually came up with this. So this is just a device. It looks at the low level, basically the buttons themselves. Because if you have a wireless controller, you have a microcontroller or an ARM on that controller. It goes over Wi-Fi. It goes into the north bridge or the south bridge of the system. Then it goes into the game engine. And then you have HDMI, which adds lag. So there's tons and tons and tons of lag. That's why games like Battletoads, if you play them on a modern TV, that game is it's already too hard. But all of the split-second timing, you lose it because the CRT was instantaneous, but HDMI has a lot of lag. So yeah, we built this, and it was like basically, a one-shot thing where it's like, oh, we're going to build this, and it'll help us figure out the timing in gaming. And then I started telling them to oh God, I don't want to say every studio, but quite a few studios. Like, they've used this on Call of Duty. EA's used it, Activision, I can't even list them all. Ubisoft, Rockstar buys tons of them. But it's a cool thing, like someone came to me like, hey, there's a problem in the, in game testing, can you help us solve it? And this was the solution, and we've evolved it quite a bit from here. Like I just did one for Raven that does, it does endpoint to endpoint keyboard testing. And I'm like, oh, you guys are interested in PC players now? And he's like, yes. And so, I don't know if any of you played Battlefield 1, but in Battlefield 1, like the PC players can strafe and kind of hack. They can move like this and dodge the bullets. And so, it's endpoint. So the system will press keys on the USB keyboard. And then the new thing we do is we put a light sensor on the screen. So the game engine can flash a square, white to black. So we're like, okay, it's completed the loop. So we can actually test from the keyboard input all the way through the system back to the screen again and get a measurement. Here's how many milliseconds that took. So yeah, it's been kind of a fun adventure. So I like it when people bring cool stuff to, I do things like this, point of sale marketing devices as well. I think it's really cool when people bring ideas to me because then I don't have to think about it. I can just build it, right? I think we did this one for Atari. They wanted they had something on the Xbox 360, so they made this really overly designed but cool Atari 2600 styled Xbox 360. So that was a really cool project. Yeah, and it's got all the switches. And yes, these switches also have a recess where they can fold in. Yeah, and another thing I did, I got into accessibility around 2006. Someone had just come back from the Iraq War and they'd lost an arm. And they're like, my arm is gone, I can't play video games. And it's like, you don't think about that. You need two arms to play a modern video game. I'm like, this is an interesting challenge. I will help you solve it. And then we started building that. We're still doing that, actually, to this day. Felix actually took over most of it, my assistant on the show. But we also made a one-handed Guitar Hero controller. Remember Guitar Hero was a big thing? So it was a foot pedal, so if you can't play Guitar Hero if you don't have both arms. And so that foot pedal helped solve that as well. Cool, so yeah, let's just get through a few more of these, and then we'll move on to questions so we can finish on time. I've made Neo Geo consoleized stuff. Obviously, people have done this much better since I have. Oh, Atari 7800 portable. I don't know why I made this, but it had a built-in paddle controller. Lovely. This is I did a bunch of stuff for AMD about 5 years ago, and this was kind of my idea of a Steam box, right? I think it was the FX2 processor. It's kind of old now. This is me trying to make a low-cost Xbox 360 using the redesigned Xbox One from 2010 that came out with the Kinect. But by that point, no one really cared about the Xbox 360 anymore. Well, because that console generation went on way too long. And then I think this is an oh, hey, there's that prototype thing. I don't know what this is. Well, I mean, it's some kind of game console. It's probably oh, you know what? That might be a reverse of that. Yeah, it probably is. Yeah. Oh, yeah, so I worked on this thing. So I got contacted, Terry and I talked. We actually did a panel about this last year. That was a fun thing to do. I was quite honored that I was the one who got to fix that thing. I mean, it wasn't very hard. I just recapped everything and checked all the motors, made sure it was good. I think it sitting in his attic for 3 years probably did more damage than anything else because the capacitors were leaking from heat. Yeah, but it was really thrilling when we finally got this to work. It took a couple tries. But when we finally got it to boot a disk and boot a homebrew game, it was like, oh, we did it. Although, looking back now, I think this system would have been kind of a dog, which is probably part of the reason they didn't make it. This is a photograph of the cartridge that comes with it. Okay, so The PlayStation was going to be an add-on to the Super Nintendo. So you'd plug it underneath, just like the Sega CD. This combo system that Terry found is basically like, okay, you could also buy this. Just like how they have the JVC XI or the Turbo Duo, basically both things combined. So this thing required a cartridge, and the add-on for the Super Nintendo would have also required a cartridge. The cartridge contains the RAM, see, work RAM, that would have stored the games loaded off of the CD-ROM. And this thing would have had less RAM than the Sega CD, a drastically slower clock rate. The Super Nintendo was slow. Basically no extended graphics capabilities. I guess my point is it would have been worse than the Sega CD, which isn't really thought to be that great of a system anyway. Like the Sega CD has a second 68,000 coprocessor at a higher clock speed. It has a separate graphics coprocessor, separate audio processor. The Nintendo PlayStation thing basically is a CD-ROM drive with some RAM and a cartridge to store it to. So one thing you think about, like a game like Super Mario Kart has a extended DSP chip that does calculations on the cartridge. You wouldn't be able to play a game like that with this system because you have no additional hardware on the cartridge. So Nintendo deferred a lot of the cost out of the system onto the specialized cartridges. Like for those of you who remember, like you were paying $70 for certain Super Nintendo titles 25 years ago, and people think $60 is a lot. So I think that would have probably caused the system to be kind of wimpy. But then, of course, we got like things like Hotel Mario on the CDI and like Zelda games. So did we really dodge a bullet? I don't know. Oh yeah, here's, I'm not going to zoom in because Windows 10 will have my guts for it. Here's something cool we did. This was another a product that we developed. It's an accessibility controller. It kind of looks like a giant hip flask. But you'd set your palm here, and then all these modules were interchangeable on a bus. See, like the analog sticks and the shoulder buttons. So you could lay them out however you wanted and have like one-hand accessibility to play your games. So we sold that for a little while, PlayStation 1. Oh, here's a photograph of one of the prototypes of the first controller. I don't know if that was the first one that I made, but it might have been. I can't remember. I've built so many things. It's just a blur at this point. So I built hundreds of things, and then I did the show and built hundreds more things, and I don't have enough RAM in my brain to hold all that. So this is the most modern version of what we build, and actually Felix does this now. And 3D printers have been an incredible boon to what I do. I mean, if I was still doing all the portable console stuff, it'd be even better. I mean, mostly it just makes bits and pieces, but we've created an additional D-pad here. See all the controls are on one side? So this is all 3D printed here. And then we have 3D printed second actuator. And then we actually laser cut 2000 grit sandpaper and we glue it in place, and that acts as the grip for your leg. So when you're playing this, you're holding it in one hand and then you actuate the second stick by moving the whole controller against your leg. Because again, if you don't have two thumbs, it's kind of tricky. And it's kind of interesting. The first controller we did like that was for someone that was injured in Iraq. And one thing about the Iraq War was it had the highest probability of survival of all wars. So a lot of people they got killed as well, but they would get hurt, but they could be recovered or fixed up. So then a lot of people were coming back with permanent injuries, such as they might not be able to play a game. And so it was kind of cool to learn about that. I don't know if it's cool, but interesting. But then also a lot of cerebral palsy, birth defects, tons of motorcycle accidents. It's kind of interesting to read why people might need accessibility in their lives. Oh, and then see we 3D print a secondary trigger in the back. Right now we just do it for the Xbox One. PlayStation 4 is really hard to mod, like the stock controllers. I've been looking for a good third-party PlayStation 4 controller, but they really don't make a whole lot. The best one I found is like the Hori fighting pad, which is like a third-party Hori controller. And sometimes you can find them on Amazon, but then there's other weird things about it. Like on the PlayStation 4, actually PlayStation 2 through 4, they use like a printed circuit board membrane like a keyboard does, and it basically makes it impossible to solder and hack. And then this is the left-handed version. So we sell both on the site. So this one, see how we've duplicated these face buttons over here? Again, using 3D printing and some laser cutting. We actually have this thing where we have a jig and we stick the controller shell into my laser cutter, and then it goes bzzz, and it like cuts out the holes and patterns, and then you can do the rest of the assembly. All right, so let's just see if there's any more photos here. Oh, there's a few more photos. This was one of the last portable things I made. This was a Xbox One S, not One X. Who in marketing was like, let's have an Xbox One S and a Xbox One X? It sounds the same. You know how like in the pilots are like, they say niner instead of 9. It's because 9 and 5 sound the same on the radio. Like X and S sound the same. Like, yeah, so this was pretty fun. Like I tried to make it like really slim and cool, and I think this whole thing is like 1.25 inches thick. So yeah, that was like pretty much the last portable I've made, but probably not the last. And then I have a photo of a pinball machine here, which is kind of a, yes. So around 2009, 2010, I was like, well, making these portable games has been, oh no, there's gum. Gross. Making these portable games has been fun. I should try something else. Oh, I should build a pinball machine. That sounds even more difficult. I was trying to challenge myself. And then I got sucked into the world of pinball, which is actually what I'm going to talk about in a panel tomorrow with the people from Fast Pinball. So if you want to hear about my pinball stuff, look for that panel on the schedule. I believe it's like around 3 o'clock tomorrow. And I'll talk about my Bill Paxton machine that I made out of junk and all the fun adventures I've had since then in pinball. Because I have this knack for turning hobbies into jobs, which kind of sucks because then you need a new hobby. All right, well, we got 15 minutes left, so if anyone would like to ask any questions about any particular project, we got 15 minutes to do that. Yes, sir.
Oh, because you can get in line.
Oh, okay. There's a line for questions?
I was going to say, for the modification of the PlayStation controllers, have you seen the new wired controller that they just released?
Is it an official controller
Yeah.
from Sony?
Yeah, well, I think it's official by Sony, but it's 8540, I believe, possibly. But it's
I think, yeah, it is wired, yeah.
blue wired minus the trackpad, minus the light bar on the back.
Oh, it doesn't have the trackpad? Yeah, the one I was looking at did have the trackpad.
It's just a little tiny thing about practice.
Oh, I should look for it. Yeah, I haven't searched recently. Yeah, because, yes, there's a circuit board in there with points you can solder to. Also, Sony uses this weird matrixing for its buttons. It's so insane. They did finally ditch the analog face button thing, which was even harder. So you got this weird matrixing, and then it's analog. Whereas in the Xbox 360 and Xbox One, it's a pull-up resistor and a switch that goes to ground. So easy. But I would love to sell those controllers to the PlayStation 4 because, it's outsold 2-to-1. The Xbox One is just too hard to mod. So I'll look into that new Hori controller, PlayStation 4, and it's wired.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
It's aimed for kids, I think, is the idea.
Awesome. Yes, sir.
One of your first pictures, you had the Atari, and it looked like you had a 9-volt stuck through the front of it. Is that what powered it?
Yeah, it had a 9-volt battery for the Atari itself, which was stupid on my part, and then another 3 batteries, 3 AAs, because that's what the TV took. And I'm not sure, I think it lasted a couple hours. It wasn't that long. But you got to remember, it was generating like 1,000 volts with a step-up converter for the CFL bulb. Yeah, so a 9-volt and 3 AAs, very clunky. Yes, sir.
All these pictures are portables being made by you. Have you ever gone the other way, taking a portable and making a console?
So, yeah, well, not a console. We kind of laughed because we got that. Where did this gum come from? we did that with our giant Game Boy because a lot of people had asked that question. So we're like, let's make the world's biggest Game Boy. So I've done that once, and because I don't know if you saw it on my show, but I made like this 606% scale Game Boy. Well, what I did was we had this old 4:3 monitor, like a 4:3 LCD, and then I scaled the rest of the Game Boy to fit the monitor. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's why it ended up being 600% or whatever. That's the only time I've ever consoleized a portable. Yes, sir.
You mentioned at the start that you were, quote, perplexed about people collecting Atari stuff back in the early 2000s. I'm just sort of curious, did that mean you just were surprised that people collected old video games, or was it just something you hadn't really thought about?
I guess I was surprised that it was as popular as it was. Because, that was, obviously there was the internet, but even back then it wasn't as omnipresent as it is today.
It was dial-up back then mostly.
Yeah, and it was really hard to connect with other people. So you'd go on the internet to illegally download songs or porn. Like you didn't realize it could be used to, connect. There weren't any social networks back then. So what I knew about video gaming was like, oh yeah, me and my friends like to play GoldenEye or whatever, and yeah, it was fun to discover a whole world out there. Like, there's all sorts of weird subcultures, in the world. Like, I'm sure, our grandparents would scratch their heads at speed running. To us, it seems normal. So, yeah, I guess I was just surprised, but happily surprised. Yes?
Yeah, for someone who has really basic soldering skills, what kind of projects would you recommend starting to get to, I guess?
With game consoles?
Yeah.
Definitely older game consoles where you don't have to worry about surface mount. The original Atari is pretty easy to work with. I mean, it's ancient 70s stuff. I would say just don't do anything past the Super Nintendo. Actually, even the Super Nintendo had a lot of surface mount in it. Yeah, and then if you want to, you can watch like some of my cool videos. We have a lot of soldering tips. There's also tons of YouTube videos about that. But yeah, basically, through hole where the pins go through the PCB. So try to stick with that. So I would say pre Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis.
I just don't remember what it was, but there was a video where you literally cut like a console in half. Like,
Oh yeah.
It's like, alright, do that without like completely destroying my console.
Well, you basically map out all the traces so you know what you're cutting, and then you keep the pieces so you can figure out how to reattach it. Yeah. Back there to the left by the Mario hat. Yep.
What were you doing for a living before you gained notoriety of modding systems?
I was a graphic artist, which is why I was able to make things look cool, and also gave me some idea about mechanical design and CNC. And then I actually quit that job in 2004 and wrote my book, and then I've been self-employed ever since. I never got back around to working for the man. Yes, sir, front row. Or woman.
Did you ever?
Oh, no, not you. I mean, working for the man. Never mind.
Did you ever?
I was trying to, be androgynous about corporations. I'm sorry, what's your question?
Did you ever get into modding like 8-bit computer stuff?
Yeah, I had the Atari 800, the Commodore 64, and the Apple II GS. And also, I made a handheld ZX Spectrum, or ZX Spectrum, as they say in England. Yeah, so I really love 8-bit computers, and I'd like to do more of that stuff in the future. Back to the Future kind of shirt man.
Have you ever thought about doing a Super Nintendo portable?
Yeah, there was one in the slide. Yeah,
I didn't see it.
yeah, but now those Super Minis are, so expensive, but I guess they have a lot of clones now. Yeah, I haven't thought that Atari was hot, and now Super Nintendo N64 is hot. I loathe hacking N64, but maybe the Super Nintendo, because there's like a whole new generation of fans that maybe they'd be interested in some of this portable stuff as cool high-end collectibles. Yes, sir.
Sorry to bring up the Nintendo 64 again.
That's okay.
Why don't you guys tend to use custom-made PCBs for a lot of your mods? I see, Perf board use a lot of time, but why don't you do small runs of PCBs to fix those problems that you have?
Well, as far as the show goes, we usually don't have time to design things like that. I think Marshall Hecht did a really awesome miniature PCB. Like, he rolled his own PCB at the N64. You have to pull the chips off of it, but he put it on this board, and then also someone used a PIC microcontroller to reproduce the functions of the controller. So basically, it rolls the memory RAM and the control all into one little microcontroller. So it's like a little 1 inch square with an analog stick on it, and the rest of it you just wire in. And I wish that would have been done when we started making our N64 portable, but unfortunately it wasn't. Yeah, that system is just really flaky to work with. So, yes, you in the back by the camera.
Yeah, you ever done any ColecoVision work, specifically about the power supply? I'm trying to think about how to get rid of that wall board.
Yeah, and it's got the weird voltages too, which I believe is...
Get rid of that.
Okay.
Replace the VRAM, but would you just cut open the wall board and basically turn it into a...
Well, you could probably make a more modern switching power supply. You'd probably want to figure out what the main base voltage was. I think that system, it's -5, +12, +5. Right, yeah, because the -5 is used for the VRAM, because it was back when they had the, those weird static chips. You could probably replace the RAM, too, because all the weird voltages on those old systems were mostly for the RAM. Yeah, I would say just make a switching power supply for the main voltage, 12, and then knock it down using a switching regulator so there's no heat, down to 5.
Like something off DigiKey or something like that, or would you use the one that supplied one? But I'm just trying to find the best way to get rid of that thing and hopefully put it inside the case.
Yeah, I think it would be important to figure out what kind of current the ColecoVision draws. It could be higher than you think, and just make sure that you have enough. And then, yeah, I would say make a 12-volt power supply and then knock it down to 5 and then use the 5 for the other things. And you've already said you got rid of the -5. So it sounds like you're halfway there. Yeah, I've got a few more minutes. Beard Man.
I was kind of curious what your relationship is with a lot of the system vendors. Like you talk about working with game companies, but have you ever been approached or done any work for Nintendo or Sony or anything else?
No, I have not. But I also haven't had any lawsuit threats from them either, so that's good enough for me. Except for Coleco, which was that interesting thing that was on Atari Age. I don't know if any of you saw that, but yeah, I'll let you go to Atari Age to read about that. Yeah, so it's mostly amicable. Like Microsoft, for instance, quote, "We like you. You buy a lot of our shit." Yes, sir.
What's the deal with Bill Paxton?
The actor or the game?
Why Bill Paxton for your pinball machine?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. I wanted to make a pinball machine, and I'm like, okay, what's the theme? And I'm like, okay, what would geeky people make? And I think Evil Dead was a thought. Then I'm like, no, I should make it more obscure, so when people see it, they're like, why that? But then Bill Paxton has so many, sad day, had so many great lines from his movies. You know, he was just a very funny actor. And so I knew that if I just put a bunch of his dialogue in a pinball machine, it would be really funny. So, yeah, it was an interesting choice. Yeah, a couple more. Plaid Man.
I'm trying on a microphone.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed when you did the Jumbo Game Boy.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you thought about doing another portable, say like Nintendo DS jumbo size or the 3DS jumbo size, where you have like the touch screen and
maybe. I think that would be a lot harder for me to implement. I'm not sure if I could quite do it. The Game Boy is pretty simple, but yeah. I guess if someone wanted to commission it. Yeah. Got time for a couple more? What do you guys think? Or... Yes.
Have you ever considered using like an FPGA to replace a console?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the ideal way to do it. I'm only rudimentarily functional at FPGAs. I'm not talented enough with FPGAs to do that, but that would be the best way forward. I mean, because it's almost not even really emulation at that point. It's just the system is put into a chip. Like when I was here last year, I actually bought the retro AVS those guys sell, and I love it. It's great, and it's it's not an emulation. It's basically the hard part. Oh yeah, Kevin, he could do it.
No, Kevin Horton? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Have you ever tried considering doing the Sega Saturn?
I have a Saturn. I thought about it, but the Saturn has the same kind of problems that the Dreamcast and the GameCube has, and that it's built really vertically. However, if you were to, I mean, now they have SD card replacements for all the drives. I think you'd have to take the disk drive out. In which case, the Saturn could be possible, although its power consumption might be high because it has, like, what, 2 CPUs and quite a bit of things in there?
2 GPUs.
I did do an Atari Jaguar once for some reason, so if I did that, I could do, the Saturn, which is clearly a much better system. Anything else? Yes, sir. You with the hand. I'm not even trying anymore.
Any future follow-ups of Pachinko?
The Pachinko?
Yeah.
Probably not. Yeah, I mean, it still works. It was kind of interesting to look inside that machine. Like, it was all, the original one's completely mechanical. I mean, there's like a power plug where it just goes to some lights and very well built. I mean, it's really plasticky. I didn't expect that, but it was fun. Yeah, all right, well, oh, yes.
Have you seen the Super NT? Are you planning on making a portable of that?
What is that? I have not seen it.
It's the analog NT. Or the analog NT name.
Oh, that's the one that, wait.
That's an FPGA console.
Oh, okay. I couldn't comment on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just thought it.
Is this gum or? No, it's gum. I don't even know how did it get in there?
It's magic.
All right, well, thanks for coming, everyone. Have a good time at the show.